Long before the end of the world, the thunder god met his killer and chose to let him live. At the very bottom of the sea coils a serpent so vast that its body wraps around the entire world. It bites down on its own tail in the black water, and everything you have ever known rests inside its circle. The gods keep a grim prophecy about this monster and the thunder god, and it ends with both of them dead. The gods once feared this creature so much they hurled it as a small snake into the deep gray sea. But it did not drown. It grew and grew until it stretched around all the lands and bit its own tail. Now it lies out there in the deep, patient, and enormous, dreaming its slow, cold dreams beneath every ship that sails. One day, they are fated to kill each other. But today, years too early, the thunder god finds him first. Thor is the strongest thing that walks the 9 worlds, red-bearded, storm-eyed, and utterly without fear. His hammer never misses and always flies back to his hand, and no giant alive has survived his swing. But strength like his grows hungry for a worthy enemy, and only one creature in all creation truly qualifies. For years, the serpent has haunted his mind, the one foe his hammer has never once been allowed to face. It begins, strangely, with a feast, because the sea god Aegir wants to brew ale for all the gods. He needs a cauldron a full mile wide, and only one giant in the world owns a kettle that enormous. That giant is Hymir, cold and ancient, who lives at the frozen edge of the world past rivers of ice. So Thor sets out for Hymir's hall, not yet knowing the sea itself is about to test him. The road there runs through country where the cold itself feels alive and the mountains lean in to listen. Hymir's hall rises out of the ice, its high rafters hung with the pale skulls of things he has killed. The giant comes home at dusk, his beard stiff with frost and his glare cold enough to freeze a fire. He does not want a god sitting under his roof, and he does not bother to hide his hatred. His stare alone cracks a heavy stone beam, and a row of cauldrons shatters where it hangs above him. But the old laws of hospitality bind even a giant, so Hymir grudgingly kills 3 oxen for the evening meal. Thor sits down at the long table, and what he does next turns the ancient giant's blood to ice. The thunder god eats. He devours 1 whole ox, then a second, then the third, right down to the bones. Whole carcasses disappear, and still the god reaches for more, as if the sea itself could not fill him. Hymir watches his whole winter store vanish into the appetite of his guest, and something inside him finally snaps. If this god keeps eating like this, the giant realizes, they will both starve long before the spring frost breaks. So Hymir makes a cold decision. At dawn, they will row far out to sea and catch their own food. He believes the cold ocean will humble the god. He has no idea at all what the god is hunting. At first, light Thor asks for bait, and the sneering giant tells him to go and find his own. Thor walks straight to Hymir's prize herd, to the largest black ox, the giant's most treasured living beast. With his bare hands, he takes the great head clean off and carries it down to the waiting boat. Hymir watches, speechless, as his finest animal becomes nothing more than a lump of bait swinging on a hook. They push off into a gray, heaving sea, the god at one oar and the giant straining at the other. Thor pulls so hard, the whole boat leaps forward, and the shoreline behind them shrinks to a thin white line. Hymir stops them over his usual grounds, where he always fishes, and drops his heavy line into the swell. In minutes, he hauls up 2 fat whales, proud and certain that this is as far as they should ever go. But the god has not rowed to the end of the world to fill a boat with ordinary fish. But Thor keeps rowing, past the whales, past the safe water, out toward the black edge of the horizon. The giant twists around in sudden alarm. This is deep water now, and the deep water has a tenant. He warns the god to stop at once, because out here lives the very serpent that circles the whole world. Thor says nothing and rows even harder, because the serpent is exactly the thing he came out here to find. The waves themselves change. They grow slow and oily and wrong, rising in long swells that reek of poison. The giant's face goes as pale as sea foam, and he grips the wooden sides of the little boat. Below them, the water turns bottomless and black, and something impossibly enormous is beginning to stir in the dark. Thor finally lifts his oars and reaches for the strongest line and the largest iron hook ever forged. He drives the great hook through the ox head and lets the whole thing sink slowly into the dark. Down it goes, down past the last of the light, down to where the monster lies coiled around everything. Far beneath the boat, in the crushing dark, a single vast eye slowly opens toward the drifting scent of ox. For one long moment, nothing happens at all, and the only sound is the terrified giant's ragged breathing. Then the line snaps tight, not a tug, but a pull that drags the whole boat sideways through the water. Far below, the world serpent has swallowed the ox head whole, and the iron hook is buried deep in its jaw. It thrashes, and the sea for miles boils white, and a wave taller than the hull rolls toward the boat. The little boat rides up the wall of water and crashes down again, and still the god does not let go. Thor plants his feet and hauls, and the raw strength coiled in his arms could tear whole mountains apart. He pulls so hard, his legs punch straight through the bottom of the boat, splintering the thick wooden planks. His feet find the seafloor far below, and he braces against the very bones of the ocean and heaves. The whole ocean seems to pull in the other direction, god against monster, with the little boat caught between. The giant clings to the mast and screams as cold water pours in around the god's driven, straining legs. And then, breaking the surface at last, comes the head of the thing that will one day end the world. It is vast beyond all reason, scaled and streaming, its eyes two burning furnaces above the drowning sea. The serpent and the god stare at each other across the churning water, killer and killer meeting at last. Poison sprays from its open jaws in a black falling rain, hissing wherever it strikes the heaving waves. The whole sky darkens, the birds flee inland, and the water for miles goes silent under the monster's shadow. Thor's fury rises to meet it, thunder gathering in the sky, white lightning crawling along his broad shoulders. One hand holds the line that holds the monster fast. The other reaches slowly back for his hammer. This is the moment. The serpent is caught, the god is ready, and the end of the world has come early. He lifts Mjolnir high over his head, and every single cloud in the sky turns black at once. In that frozen instant, the whole of creation hangs on a single swing that has come far too early. One blow. One clean swing, and the prophecy dies right here, long decades before it is ever meant to happen. But behind him, all but forgotten, the giant Hymir is drowning in raw terror and freezing seawater. Hymir sees the monster, sees the god, and sees the whole world about to be torn violently open. And the coward makes his choice. He draws out a small knife and reaches, trembling, for the fishing line. As the great hammer begins to fall, the giant slashes the taut fishing line clean through. The tension vanishes. The freed monster whips backward into the sea with a sound like a whole mountain falling. Mjolnir comes crashing down on empty water, and a huge wave erupts where the serpent's head had just been. Thor hurls the hammer after it into the deep, and thunder cracks and rolls across the whole ocean. The hammer strikes the fleeing shape a glancing blow, and the entire sea shudders as if the world itself flinched. Somewhere far below, the wounded serpent sinks slowly back into its endless circle around the world, still alive. And the cheated prophecy, robbed of its early ending, quietly seals itself shut again for another long age. Thor turns on the giant with a look that has drowned whole kingdoms, his rage colder than the sea itself. He strikes Hymir a single ringing blow, and the giant goes over the side into the churning gray water. Then the god wades back to shore through the cold shallows, the two whales still lying in the ruined boat. He has his catch, he has his story, but he does not have the one kill he truly came for. The world serpent still lives, and both of them know it, and both of them will always remember. From that day, the serpent's hatred hardens, coiled in the dark, waiting for the debt to finally come due. This one failed catch matters far more than any monster the thunder god ever managed to kill. Because the Norse never told this as a simple fish tale, they told it always as a warning. They knew a secret. One day the sea will heave again, and this time no trembling giant will cut the line. At the end of all things, the horns will blow, and the world serpent will rise up for the last time. It will crawl up onto the land, spitting the poison that will darken the sky and foul the whole sea. And Thor will be waiting for it, hammer in hand. The rematch a whole world has spent ages dreading. He will kill it. He will crush the vast skull, then walk exactly 9 mighty strides away from the body. And on the 9th step, the serpent's poison will finally reach his heart, and the thunder god will fall dead. The two of them die together at last, exactly as the prophecy always swore they one day would. That is why this single day out on the water is the first Ragnarok, a rehearsal for the true end. Everything that will happen at the end of the world very nearly happened here, in one small leaking boat. The bite, the glare, the raised hammer, the falling poison rain. All of it arriving decades too soon. The only real difference is the giant's knife, one small frightened cut that bought the world more time. And the Vikings believed all of this so deeply that they carved it into stone across their entire world. In Sweden still stands the Altuna rune stone, where the thunder god braces his foot straight through a boat. You can still trace the line, the hook, and the coiled serpent waiting patiently under the carved water. In England, at Gosforth, a tall stone cross shows the very same god fishing for the very same monster. The bait is there too, the ox head, hanging out over the deep on a quiet churchyard cross. And 1,000 years ago, a poet stood in an Icelandic hall and described a carving of this exact scene. Painted wooden panels showed the god and the serpent, and the poet turned that painted picture into ringing verse. For the Vikings, this was not a story about the past. It was a picture of the end still to come. From Iceland to England to Sweden, the same single moment was cut and carved and sung over and over again. Not the battles he won. This one, the great catch that got away, the enemy he did not kill. Because the Norse understood something about their own strongest god that we ourselves too often forget. Even Thor, the mightiest thing in all creation, was allowed to touch his own fate exactly once and no more. He had the monster on the hook, he had the hammer raised, and still the kill was not his to take. Some endings simply cannot be rushed, no matter how strong the hand that reaches down to seize them. The strongest hand in all the worlds closed on its enemy, and fate itself gently pried the fingers back open. So the serpent sank, and the god went home, and the world spun on toward the day already written. 2 enemies, 1 hook, 1 severed line, and a final rematch waiting quietly at the very edge of time. One day that quiet line between them will pull tight for the very last time, and the world will end with it. Will Thor ever kill the world serpent? Yes, but not on this day, and never without dying himself. The greatest catch of his whole life slipped the hook, and somewhere in the deep dark, it is still waiting. The hook was set once, and it will be set again, and this time no hand will save the world.